Peter, in a Katrina retrospective, you wrote that 10 years later, New Orleans is a resurrection city. In what way?
In many ways, education, public education, which was really in really bad shape before Katrina, at the very least has gotten a real influx of money to rebuild infrastructure, and not only that have the schools been just better facilities, but there's been a lot of charter school operations, and so they've really tried to target more local control of the schools, which I think has resulted in certainly in better test scores for kids. So the public education system is better. I think we are a little bit more of a diverse economy now. We've had a lot of young people who have moved in, a lot of technology jobs. So the economy is better. Certainly the things that have been rebuilt stronger and smarter, and people who have had to rebuild their homes and have to build them up, just in case of another event, which we hope never happens again. So, and I think there was a general unity of purpose about, New Orleans, and I think there was a kind of a unified vision. So I think we've still got a long way to go, but there's been a lot of improvement.
Peter, I'm encouraged to hear that we've gotten this far in terms of education, in terms of the economy, and of course, in terms of the unity that you talked about. But take us back there a little bit. I was struck by comments made by retired Archbishop Alfred Hughes. He said that he was stunned when he took a helicopter flight over the massive flooding that was 2 days after the storm, and then he walked through the streets. And I get the sense it was so unbelievable. You had to step outside of yourself and transcend above it in order to really fully understand it. Is that what it was like?
It was. I was there about a week after the storm, and still there was water in much of the city. The water didn't drain out for 2 to 3 weeks, but what you saw after the water receded and they pumped it out was nothing, just brown, gray. Nothing was growing, and as the Archbishop said, you couldn't hear a bird. There were no birds. There was no sounds. There were no cars. It was like being on the face of the moon. And so he said, he couldn't imagine how life could be breathed back into the city because it was so devastated. And I think that was the feeling everybody had, in cleaning out their houses. Just how can we ever recover from this? But
Peter,
10 years later, we have.
You have. And I want to talk a little bit about the fact that 500,000 Catholics in the city were forced to abandon everything they hold dear, not the least of which the faith that they grew up in their parishes. Have we started to see those numbers rebound?
Yes, in fact, the total population, general population for the New Orleans area is right at about 91% of what it was before Katrina. And I think really the Catholic population has followed that as well. So we're still saying there's probably a shade under 500,000 Catholics in the Archdiocese. There are fewer church parishes and fewer schools because the ones that got devastated did not come back. And there were some mergers that came out of the restructuring of the Archdiocese. But the ones that are now there are, I believe, stronger, and so there's been some hurt, certainly, from people who thought maybe their church should be, put back into worship, and it was not. But I think really people have grown to accept the decisions that were made, the very difficult decisions that Archbishop Hughes had to make. And so I think the faith has grown stronger.
Peter, I'm also encouraged to see that I know it's difficult. I know there's a lot of work to do, and on some sense there does seem to be a sense of abandonment, which I do hope more help does flood into the city and help it out. But in a June 20th letter to Catholics in the diocese from Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, a word of encouragement from the Vatican. How does that make you feel?
Oh, it's wonderful. We're on the radar of the Pope, and,
That's right.
and the Apostolic Nuncio sent. It was really, and I thought it was very interesting in that letter. He talked about those who are still struggling to recover. A lot of people, including myself, who lost a house. We've pretty much put our lives back together, but there's a lot of people still struggling to either come back to the city or to rebuild their homes still as we speak.
Okay.
So we can't forget them.
Now, Peter, you write for the Archdiocese. You're a Catholic news reporter out there. You're in touch with the faithful. Tell us, what do you need? aside from our prayers, which we give to you generously, what's needed? What more needs to be done?
Well, you know, the world, the United States has really come to New Orleans' assistance in these last 10 years. There are still, Liz, people coming week after week to help rebuild parts of the city that are still struggling to recover, like the lower Ninth Ward. There's still college groups coming on spring break. It's hard to believe 10 years after they're still coming. So I mean, I think just really to continue to do that and to pray for us. But I think the volunteers who have come in, and most of them from church-related faith communities, have really, without them, the city would not have recovered as it has to this point.
One thing about our Catholic Church, we stick together. Thank you
That's
so much.
True.
Thank you, Peter, so much. I'm happy you're doing better. Always sending our prayers to you guys, and we'll touch base again very soon.
Thank you so much, Liz.
You're very welcome.